when that opportunity opens up, I'm there for it, man. I'm like, yes, let's do this.
Welcome to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast, a weekly podcast providing career and creative inspiration to help you build a purpose-filled life. If you're interested in tapping into your creative potential, pursuing a career with passion, and building on your biggest and best resource, yourself, please join me on this path. I'm your host, Nancy Moore, and I want you to know that I'm on this journey with you. So let's get started. Dana Drummond has a heart for helping nonprofit organizations. As the founder of Sharpshooter Communications, she assists nonprofits seek, secure, and manage grants. She knows the impact that grants give to philanthropic organizations, and as a result, those organizations can create change and positively impact so many. Throughout Dana's career, she has helped nonprofits secure over $50 million in funding. She recently received an Outstanding Professional Fundraiser Award from the Northeast Oklahoma chapter of the Association of Fundraising Professionals. So when you hear from Dana, you're going to hear her passion for writing grants and why she's so interested in it. You're also going to hear some surprising side hustles that she has. And you are going to find out about a gangster that she is related to and why philanthropy helped her own family. So I can't wait for you to hear from Dana. Okay, Dana, I am so excited to be talking with you today.
I am excited.
Welcome. So this is Dana Drummond, everybody. She is the president and founder of Sharpshooter Communications.
Yes.
So, if you think about what's in a name,
yes,
the sharpshooter
yes,
has, I think, maybe a relation to something that you've done in the past. How did you come up with that name?
I always see all these people who have these just incredibly clever names for their companies.
I think yours is clever.
Bands. Well, thank you.
Yes.
I came up with it because as I was trying to think of a name, I thought, okay, what relates to me? But then it's still about maybe what I do or my philosophy. Well, I used to shoot rifles competitively when I was a teenager and was really world class. We did it all the time. Went to the Olympic Training Center, trained with the Army, did all of these things. I've got a national record. So I was a sharpshooter, and that was really my life all the way up until I graduated high school. And so when I thought about naming my company, I thought that is a perfect name because it pays homage to this foundational part of my life that taught me how to focus and taught me how to be dedicated to a goal. But then it also applies to my work, which is helping people communicate what they want.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Yeah.
And you have another thing that you've come up with that we're going to talk about that also kind of relates to the rifle type of thing.
You got to have a thing.
I like that. But yours, because it's tied to you personally, I think that's neat. And I know you didn't know I was going to ask you that, but I thought it's such a cool name. We've got to talk about the name first.
Yes.
So anyway, okay. So now if you'll tell me what Sharpshooter Communications is about.
We're not packing heat.
Yeah.
So that's the good news. Yeah. That's the good news. What we do is primarily, if I had to put us in a category, I would say grants. But we work with nonprofits and we help them get ready for grants. And grants are so much more than just filling out an application and sending it into a funder. There is this whole scope of readiness that you have to do in terms of your organization and your programs and your finances in order to be grant ready. And so we really do all of that. When I started, it was really more about writing the grants. And as I got more and more into it, it just expanded because we were doing so much more. So we do a lot of research. We do a lot of consulting with the organization just to make sure they are using best practices and that they are able to put their best foot forward.
Okay. Yeah. There is a lot of money out there that can be, obtained, but I did not realize all the intricacies of the grant process.
It is. I have been in the nonprofit world for over 30 years. And when I first started writing grants, especially to private foundations, it was maybe a 2-page letter. And you would just type up what you do and maybe a little story about somebody that you serve, and you'd send it in, and you'd get, and now this isn't across the board, but in general, you'd maybe get a $10,000, $20,000 check back in the mail. You'd send your thank you note and maybe a report, and call them on the phone a couple of times. Today, there are so many different steps, and you've got to fill out a really long application and then do quarterly reports and submit this paperwork and do all of this stuff. And you're still, a lot of times, just getting that same $20,000, which is worth a lot less. So I am seeing more and more organizations just going, it's not necessarily brain surgery, but it is tedious enough and intimidating enough that they really need help with it. And that's what we do. And Nancy, I want to kind of go back to one thing you said. There's a lot of times a misconception about grants, because people think the first thing you said is there's a lot of money out there. And most people, and it's kind of a myth, that there's just billions of dollars out there waiting for you, and all you have to do is submit this little bitty grant and this little application. The money's just going to come pouring in, and that is absolutely not true. Tulsa has more generous philanthropic organizations and people than I think any other city per capita, for our size. We are so philanthropic, but even as many as we have here, they get far more applications and requests for donations than what they have money to give. So it is very competitive, and it's getting more competitive every day.
Well, okay, so one of the reasons, I'm glad that you're educating us on this. I know,
yeah, let me kill your dreams.
No, well, okay, I'm glad that you said that, because this is one of the reasons why I invited you on the podcast. People are interested in starting nonprofits, and I have heard when people are emailing me, can you have somebody that from a nonprofit who's passionate about, that?
Yes.
And so when we talked, I thought, well, you're so knowledgeable about different nonprofits and starting nonprofits. And so when I said to you something about, encouraging people to start a nonprofit, I thought, you had the greatest response, and you said, well, go ahead, because I'm going to have you share what it is.
I think it was probably when I said the world doesn't need another 501c3.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's not actually true. I mean, there are times when there really is a reason to start a nonprofit. Mm-hmm. And really, I get calls all the time from people who have either thought about starting a nonprofit, or they already started a nonprofit and got into it and then realized they didn't know what they were doing. And I get these calls all the time. Mm-hmm. So these are folks who, they're not foolish. They're not doing the wrong thing. These are, with every single time, 100%, these are passionate people who want to make a difference in the world. Mm-hmm. And so it's my job to not crush their dreams, even though sometimes I feel like I am. Mm-hmm. But the truth is, there are very, very few things that you can do, that you can maybe feel led to do, that there's not anybody else doing. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes there is. Sometimes there's a niche, and you really do need to have an organization doing that. But most of the time, if you want to help feed people who are hungry, there are a half a dozen at least organizations in Tulsa who are doing that. And you know what? They need help. Mm-hmm. Go help them instead of starting your own. If you want to do an animal rescue, there must be 3,000 animal rescue programs around Tulsa. Mm-hmm. Find one and join them and help them. And do that before you look at starting your own. Mm-hmm. That way you've got experience kind of in that space, and you know what the needs really are and who's really not filling those needs, or who is, and what the gaps are.
But you do need to educate yourself. So
you have to educate yourself.
Yes. But the stuff that I'm hearing is helping teenagers. Okay. Or helping the animals, or, different things. So you were hitting it right on the head when you said that.
Yes.
And I don't want to discourage anybody either.
Never.
But people need to be realistic.
They do need to be realistic. And what ends up happening, unfortunately, and I've seen it too many times, is that you get these people who are very passionate, and they start this and they have these great dreams. Mm-hmm. And then they realize how much work it is. Mm-hmm. And so maybe they are still raising money and still doing a little bit, but things just kind of start crumbling. What ends up happening then is they start just kind of limping along, just maybe doing the bare minimum, or what they have time to do, because they are so busy and they don't have the resources to hire more people. And at that point, they become what I call nonprofit zombies, because they are not really having the impact that they wanted to have, but they're taking resources out of the community that could be going to another organization that maybe could have a lot more impact. So we have a lot of zombies in Tulsa. And I think the last count, there's over 3,000 nonprofit organizations registered in Tulsa. And there's probably only, 500 that are really doing anything. So the rest of them are just existing.
Okay. So now when people do come to you and are hoping to, solicit services and that kind of thing, if you can give me an example of kind of people that you work with.
We work with all kinds. So there's not just a one size fits all. So I don't really want to limit who I work with. And a lot of consultants do. A lot of consultants say we only want to work on giant capital campaigns that are millions and millions of dollars. We work, our biggest client probably has a $30 million a year budget.
Okay.
Our smallest clients are just starting and maybe have 20 or 30,000, a year, but they are small and they're starting, and we are making sure that they are starting correctly, doing everything right, getting set up right. So it really is all over the place. And I would say kind of our sweet spot are those organizations that would be considered mid-sized. And so maybe a few $1 million is their budget, but they're really wanting to grow. A lot of times they are organizations that have maybe done 1 or 2 grants in the past, but the majority of their funding has been from individuals or contracts or a government contract, or something like that. We love working with them because they're going from strength to strength. They started out strong, and then this is just going to really expand what they're doing. And that's exciting.
Yeah, that is. Yeah. And you're working with people that don't have an in-house grant
most
writing
of the time,
team?
but not always.
Okay.
A lot of times they do have maybe one grant professional who's on staff, but that person just needs help. Sometimes I get calls. I've talked to somebody this week that they have a fabulous grant professional on staff, but they've got like 3 opportunities in 1 month and they just can't get them all done. So we do help fill in. We've had times when a grant professional is on leave and they need someone to step in and help. So we try to do what the client needs, and I have a really hard time saying no. To anything when somebody calls. So, let me ask you about the grant holster. So again, the play on words with the holster. Yes.
But grant holster, and this is something that you have devised.
Yes.
And it's a program. If you could share what the program does and then who that program might be good for.
Absolutely. So Grant Holster, I got so frustrated. This was back in 2017. Actually, it started when I started my company back in the early 2000s, that there was no computer application, database type thing that was developed for grant professionals. And so they have them for fundraising, they have them for accounting, but there was nothing that worked the way that grants worked. And I did research on, I think, everything that was out there, and everything required workarounds. And it just really frustrated me. So I have a friend who's a PhD computer scientist, and I was talking to her about it, and we were having coffee, and I'm sketching out on a napkin. I started sketching out what I would wanted an application to do. And I'm like, why, do you know of anything that does this or that will let me do this? And she looked at it for a little while and she's like, yeah, you know what this is? And I said, what? She goes, this is a wireframe. And she educated me on what a wireframe is, how you design an application, what it is. And she was like, take this to a developer and hire them to make it for you. So I did. And we got it all, and I just could not think of a name that worked. And I thought, I need to do something that's sort of related to Sharpshooter, but it doesn't rely on it. And Grant Holster, just having a holster where you hold all of your information came to mind because we talked a lot about that. And so I'm like, Grant Holster, it's a holster. And that was where we came up with Grant Holster. So what it does is it organizes the process of seeking grants. So it doesn't go out and search to find grantors, because there's a lot of programs that do that. So we don't do that. So once you know that a funder is kind of on your horizon, it lets you schedule everything. It lets you have a vault where you can keep all of your information. And it works the way that grant professionals work in terms of knowing what deadlines need to be in there and how people work.
Okay.
We have different tiers that you can purchase. So it works really well for anyone from a small, if you're doing 5 or 6 grants even, you could do that, all the way up to doing hundreds. We have clients that do, well, and we use it every day as well. We do hundreds of grants every year.
Okay.
It keeps us organized.
Okay. See, I think that's so brilliant. I had somebody talking to me
I love
recently.
it when people call me brilliant.
It's
Thank
brilliant.
You, Nancy. I love that.
But it's also just
Say
to
it again.
you are brilliant, Dana.
Thank you.
Yes, but just to be able to go out and, have an idea and figure out how to get that executed, how to, get it figured out. I
Thank
think
you.
that's really awesome.
Well,
So-
it was born of frustration. And so what is it they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. And we absolutely had to have something because we were losing our minds.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. That's probably, it's helped you and then helped probably tons of people.
I hope so. I wish it was helping more, and hopefully it will be soon. I mean,
Yes.
it's starting a business, and it's starting an application, a computer, a cloud-based business, and it's scary. That's a scary place to be working. So, but that's good, because when you do something, and that's what I love so much about your podcast is it's about people who saw something and took that chance and just kind of leapt over the cliff and just said, the parachute's going to open, it's going to work, and it's going to make everything better. And a lot of times I feel like I'm still teetering on the cliff, but it's kind of scary, and you really do have to be passionate about it.
So I was talking about you yesterday to, her name is Jennifer Mormon, and she is an author and just a really fascinating person. And she has a magazine called This Inspired Life, and we had a chat. It's an online magazine. So I'm giving her a plug because yesterday when I talked to her online, I gave you a plug. But I said the person, because I got to talk about upcoming guests, and of course you were on my mind, but I said this person is really passionate about writing grants.
I know, the most boring thing in the world in nonprofits, and I think it's so cool.
And I love that. So there's something for everybody.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love that you think it's so cool. But then you've even taken it and developed it further with Grant Holster and all that. Yes. So you have seen this money going to different individuals and, helping in the community. Yeah. So I do want to ask you, we talked about this, and I think this is very unique, but you have a famous gangster who is a part of your
gears.
Yes, let's switch gears.
Yeah.
So anyway, who's a part of your lineage, because we're talking about how philanthropy, has helped different individuals.
Exactly.
But I wanted you to share that, that past, and then how philanthropy helped your family.
Absolutely. So this is our deep, dark family secret that really, until I finally, told my mom it's okay for us to talk about this. It's been 90 years now, and we can talk about it. So my great-grandfather, actually my great-grandmother, great-grandfather, was Machine Gun Kelly, who was a pretty famous gangster back in the day, and it was his kidnapping. He kidnapped a wealthy oil man who was a billionaire, equivalent to a billionaire today, who lived in Oklahoma City. His name was Charles Urschel, and Machine Gun Kelly had really been a lifelong criminal. He just couldn't seem to keep an honest job, but he was a nice guy, a decent guy. He didn't beat people up or anything like that, but he just kind of liked to bootleg, and then started robbing. Then he married my great-grandmother, so he's actually my step great-grandfather. She was not quite as nice as he was, and she got him into bank robbing. And so that was when they created his persona of Machine Gun Kelly. So she had the idea to go get him a Tommy gun in Fort Worth, Texas. I think she bought it for, $27 or something in a pawn shop, and took him out so he would shoot it, and then gathered up all of the casings from the bullets, and then she would hand them out and as tips when they would go to speakeasies or diners and say, this is from Machine Gun Kelly's gun. He can write his name on the side of a barn, which he couldn't. But that's okay. That was the story that she sold. And so she made up the name Machine Gun Kelly, and they were bank robbers. However, this was 1933, the worst bad time. So it was the height of the Depression, and the banks were running out of money. And so they would go rob a bank, and the tellers would say, I'd give you money, but we don't have any. So they went to the only place where you could get money, which was rich people. And they decided to kidnap Charles Urschel in Oklahoma City. I could spend 6 hours telling you the entire story, because it is, the fact that it's not a movie is just absolutely appalling.
I think you should write all of that out. I mean, give us the teaser, but I do think you should create the script.
It is an amazing, amazing story. But to get to where it really impacts us, my grandmother, so the daughter of George and Catherine Kelly, who were the gangsters, she was 14 years old. And when she was sitting in her grandparents' ranch, that her grandparents had a ranch, she was sitting there when a group of 13 FBI agents broke into the house and arrested every adult in the house and left her sitting there. So she got in the car and drove herself up to Asher, Oklahoma, knocked on the door of her great aunt's house, presented herself there as, please take me in. And they did. And a couple of weeks later, they drove her to Oklahoma City, where they had the federal trial. She watched her entire family get sentenced to life in prison. She was essentially an orphan at that point. She went back and lived with her aunt and uncle. She finished high school at age 16. She was salutatorian. She wanted to go to college so badly and become a teacher. She would write letter after letter to President Roosevelt, to the judges in the case, to the lawyers in the case, to J. Edgar Hoover, begging for her grandmother, who was one of the people who got a life sentence, to be released. And said, my grandmother was really just a bystander on this. She's not dangerous. She can come, we can live together. She can work. I can go to college. We can take care of each other, and I can become a teacher, which is my dream. They just ignored her letters. But eventually the judge who oversaw the case where her family was all sent to prison, his name was Judge Vaught, and he was a very nice man. He wrote her back, and he had checked on her from time to time, but he wrote her a letter and said, I talked to your teachers and to your administrators at your school, and they tell me about what a wonderful young woman you are and that you're such a good student. I cannot, your grandmother, you need to accept the fact that your grandmother is not ever going to be released from prison. However, I do know a group of men who like to support worthy students and help them go to college. So these men have agreed to pay for your college, for your room and board, your books, and give you a $50 allowance every semester, which was a lot of money back in those days. So she went to college. And she graduated from college. She became a teacher. She got married. She had 2 kids who both went on and had wonderful careers. She had 5 grandkids. We've all graduated college and we all have great careers. Only because somebody paid her way through college. If not, who knows where she would have ended up.
That changed her trajectory.
And it changed my life. I have the life I have now because of that. So this is the rest of the story. She lived the rest of her life. She died in 2005. She lived her entire life asserting to everyone that it was Judge Vaught who paid her way through college. She 100%, 1,000% said he did that for me. He paid my way through college. About the time that I was writing my thesis for my master's thesis, I was writing about this and called the courthouse in Oklahoma City to talk to some people, and ended up talking to Judge Vaught's nephew, who was also a judge and actually used his chambers. I mean, what are the odds? It was so interesting. He said that they had been cleaning out the records. They had found some old records in the chambers, and one of them was a letter, and it was actually a few letters outlining the scholarship for my grandmother. And what we discovered was that Judge Vaught did not pay for my grandmother's college. The person who paid for it was Charles Urschel, the man her parents had kidnapped.
Wow.
And held for ransom. So he had been in the courtroom every day during the trial and had watched her, probably reading books, because that was all she did, was sit and read books. But he had watched her, and his heart just went out to this girl whose whole life had just crumbled, and he wanted to do something to help her. And so without that, I would not be where I am today, because he just practice this grace and philanthropy. Isn't that amazing?
That's amazing. I knew a little of that story, but I'm so happy that you shared that because it is amazing.
It is.
Yeah. Very cool story.
Yeah. And I got through it without crying.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
I feel like I'm tearing up, but yes. Yeah, that's so neat.
But it is. It's a wonderful story, and I love being able to tell people the story because it truly is the power of philanthropy, because I am not an anomaly. My family is not you think about how many 14-year-olds have parents in prison today. And there are people, there are nonprofits, there are philanthropists who are making that same exact difference in those kids' lives, so that 90 years from now, their grandchildren are going to be able to say, I'm where I am because of that. So.
Yeah. That's amazing. So cool. I love it. Okay. So I think it's so fascinating that you say, you're passionate about grant writing and helping because you're seeing the results of getting this money. And I think over the span that you have, over the time that you've done it, it's $50 million, I think you have earned for, these different nonprofits, I guess.
Right.
But anyway, so this that I have right now, the theme is Live Purposefully in 2023. And so I thought I'd love for you to talk a little about also purpose, your purpose, and it might even incorporate, some of your side hustles too that we're going to get into. So.
Okay, yeah. Well, gosh, living with purpose. One of my problems is that, and it's not a problem, it's a blessing, because I do consider my ADHD to be a blessing now that I'm an adult. And because I have lots of energy and I get excited about lots of different things. So I can get a lot of things done. But I do have that passion to make the world a better place. And I think we all have that obligation to make the world a better place. And yes, I think we estimated about $50 million over the time, but I don't think that I have earned that for my clients. All I've done is help them earn that. So they are creating the stories, and I help them tell those stories in a grant. They are the ones who manage their money well, and I'm the one who turns that into showing how they are sustainable. So it is my job to be able to take somebody who is just doing something marvelous, but maybe doesn't know how to say it the right way, or say it in a way that's going to appeal, and I get to tell their story. So when I was growing up, I had 3 things I wanted to be when I grew up. No, I'm going to say 4. I had 4 things I wanted to be when I grew up. And it was, I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be a writer because I loved the Waltons and I wanted to be John Boy. Yeah, I wanted to be a teacher because I have teachers throughout my family. And I wanted to be a comedian. I really wanted to be like Carol Burnett or, Lucille Ball. But where I am so passionate and where I feel like I just so happy every day is that I have been able to cultivate a life where all of my dreams have come true. So I get to be a writer because I write for all of these nonprofits and I get to tell these wonderful stories. I get to teach because I teach classes on grant writing and nonprofit management. I get to sing because I sing in a rock band called Beautiful Chaos. Look us up on Facebook. And
I love that plug. Beautiful Chaos. Okay.
Beautiful Chaos. And then, I like to make people laugh. And so I, just being here, we've gotten to laugh a lot. So literally all 4 of the things I grew up wanting to be, I'm able to be. And who gets to say that? What they said they wanted to be in 3rd grade, they are actually getting to do that.
That's pretty awesome. You've created that for yourself, though.
Yeah, I think I have. I think obviously, though, I've been blessed. I've been blessed with opportunities, and because I tend to not be very careful in what I do, I talked about just running off that cliff. So when that opportunity opens up, I'm there for it, man. I'm like, yes, let's do this. And there are times that I get a little overwhelmed, but it always works out. And God just makes the time happen so I can get it done.
I love that. Okay. In wrapping up, I'm going to share one more thing because you are so fascinating to me. You do so many fun things. One thing that I would also like to mention is your podcast.
Oh, I forgot about the podcast.
We're going to wrap up because here you're on my podcast, but I want you to share about your podcast. So that's how we're going to wrap up. Tell us about that because I really like that. Because you have so many things.
I know. There's just too much. There's too much. Okay, so a couple of years ago, I got to where like a lot of people, sometimes I have a hard time shutting my brain off so I can go to sleep at night. So I like to listen to different things. And I started listening. They have some podcasts that just help you fall asleep. I really liked them. And I thought, I would really like to find one where maybe they're reading the Bible. But all the ones that I would find, maybe they would have weird music or these weird voices, or all I really wanted was a podcast where somebody just read the Bible. So I thought, you know what? Why not? I'm just going to go ahead and do one. So I started a podcast, and I was really clever with the title because it doesn't have a weapon in it anywhere. It's just called Bible Bedtime. And all I do is read the Bible in a really soft voice, and it is so much fun. So I'm in season 3 of it, and we have right now, last time I checked, we had like 120,000 downloads.
Wow.
People on every inhabited continent have listened to it. So it's like 300 or 400 people a day, literally all over the world, are listening to little old me in Tulsa, Oklahoma, read the Bible to them. Isn't that mind-blowing?
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, because now your community is no longer your neighborhood. And yes, we want our neighborhood to be our community, but my community is people literally all over the world that I can talk to at any time. Isn't that great? I'm so happy that we're alive right now. We live in the best time ever.
I agree. So, okay.
It's exciting.
Well, thank you so much for
Yay!
talking to me. This
you.
has been so much fun, and I'm glad you shared about everything. So you guys check Dana out. I'll include all of her links in my show notes.
Please.
But thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was a treat.
Okay, everybody, that's a wrap on this week's episode. I want to thank you for listening to the Sharing Passion and Purpose podcast. It means the world to me, and I'd love to connect with you. Please follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Sharing Passion and Purpose, and Twitter at Passion Sharing. Also, if you like this podcast, it would mean a lot to me for you to subscribe, rate, and review it. And as always, all my show notes will be available on my website, sharingpassionandpurpose.com.